Are you ready to feel and look younger? Feeling wired, tired, and overwhelmed? Younger with Dr. Robin Benson will help you turn back the clock. Feel better, look sexier, improve your brain power, and activate your younger DNA potential. Welcome to Younger with the latest from science and top health experts worldwide. Here is your host, Dr. Robin Benson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this eye-opening episode of Younger, where we will dive deep into the often overlooked cornerstone of women's health, the cardiovascular system. Today, I welcome my dear friend Andie Crosby, president of Calroy Health Sciences, as she exposes why your heart, and more specifically, your blood vessels, should be the first place you look when it comes to living a longer, more vibrant life. So in this discussion, about empowering a woman's health, heart health, I should say, this is a conversation that every woman needs to hear, whether you're optimizing for performance, preventing disease, or simply refusing to age on autopilot. So welcome, Andie.
Hi, welcome. Thank you. It's so fun to be here with you.
Wow, well, you have become quite the expert in this world of cardiovascular health. And I'd love to hear, how did you get focused on women's heart health?
Yeah. Well, as you know, we met each other some years ago, I think over a decade ago at the gym, actually working out together. So I've always been really interested in health and wellness. I was a collegiate athlete. I'm an amateur athlete as an adult, a tennis player. And, so health and fitness and nutrition was always really important to me. And about midlife, like most women, I started to ask myself, I'd kind of grown up in consumer packaged goods and working for big agencies and big companies. And I was really looking for a way to kind of take that experience and channel it more towards a purpose that mattered to me. And that really was, health, wellness, and nutrition. So I ended up running the marketing and strategic partnership team at the Institute for Functional Medicine. So that was always a major part of my life, really thinking about health and wellness. And I happened to be working for the Institute one year, and I went to a conference where you've been to these conferences where there are exhibitors in the exhibit hall, and you get to see all the new products and try all the new technology. And I ended up doing a CIMT test, which is a carotid intermediate thickness test. And that test, as you know, is a non-invasive kind of ultrasound imaging test, and it measures the thickness of the inner two layers of the carotid arteries in your neck. And it gives you a really good indication for the health of your arteries. And you've got your biological age, which is your actual age, and then your vascular age, which is the age of your arteries and your vascular system. So I ended up getting this test, and I just thought it was a slam dunk. I thought I would hear that I'm amazing because I felt amazing. I'd been working out a lot, eating a paleo diet. At the Institute, I was working with people like Jeff Bland and Mark Hyman and really following the nutrition and the lifestyle recommendations, and just really felt that this was kind of a passing, like, oh, let's check it out and see. And then, much to my surprise, I actually got my CIMT test back. And at that time, this was June of 2019, I was 51 years old. When I got that CIMT test back, my vascular age was actually 69, which put me in the worst 10th percentile of women my age. And boy, was that a wake-up call. I had no cardiovascular disease in my family history. And so all of a sudden, I just, in retrospect, what a welcome surprise. But in the moment, it was really jarring to feel like a healthy person that I felt, was on the fast track to longevity, and to realize that I actually had this ticking time bomb in my body was, as I mentioned, just really upsetting and jarring to me. So I started really searching out, like, what do you do in this moment? Like, how do I support my body in actually reversing that vascular age and getting closer to my chronological age? So in doing that, I had been exposed to this product called Arterisol HP, which was made by Calroy Health Sciences. Spoiler alert, it worked. I'm currently the president of Calroy Health Sciences because I had such a great experience with it. But it really led me on this journey to try to understand how someone who's seemingly very healthy can have such a, like I said, a high risk kind of a hidden risk for cardiovascular disease. And of course, come to find out, this is not at all uncommon. We hear about many people, both men and women, who run a marathon and then have a massive heart attack the next day. So, heart disease remains the number one biggest health issue in America. And for women in particular, heart disease is the number one cause of death for women, and stroke is the number two cause of death. And for most women, there are no outward signs of dysfunction. So it really put me on a path to become an advocate for kind of early detection of cardiovascular disease.
That's an amazing, amazing story. So, why do you think if you were doing all the good things, you were exercising, eating really well, what did you find out?
Yeah, it's a good question. At the end of the day, I don't know what really caused that level of inflammation and dysfunction in my body because I was eating well. Now, I can say as an A-type personality, I was working out pretty hard and I was also putting a lot into my job. I had a very rewarding but high stress job. And so I do really wonder for myself how much stress, both the great stress of working out and physical activity, as well as even fulfilling work stress, contributed to that. In addition to adding arterisol to my diet, and we'll talk a little bit about why I felt like that was important and why I actually credit that to a lot of my success in dealing with this particular issue. I also think, frankly, and you probably know this better than anyone. I see you often. I really have started to prioritize the mental and spiritual component of my health. I meditate every day. I do a gratitude journal every day. I'm fortunate enough to live in the same city and town as you, so I can get great care from you. I do think that that also it was a component in me being able to positively address potential disease condition.
Well, I am so grateful to you, Andie, for telling us here at Santa Fe Soul about Arterisol. So I think it's about 3 years ago when you introduced it, and I'm like, we got to get this here. So we've had this product for 3 years, and we have so many of our patients on Arterisol because of all the reasons that we've talked about. But women, especially as they enter menopause, are at a much higher risk, right? I mean, you
Absolutely.
mentioned it's the leading cause of death for women globally, and it's responsible for 1 in 3 female deaths. And it's often silent, right? Like women have no idea that they have an issue. We have a guy that comes and does full body ultrasounds, and he too it will say, that if somebody is 60 years old, very often their arterial age is like 88 or 101, and it's very alarming. So
Yeah.
so not only do we want to put them in our tier zone, and I know we'll go into in depth more of what that's actually doing, but looking at all the lifestyle factors, right? You mentioned stress. I think that's number one. That affects our heart more than anything. And of course, diet, lack of exercise, right? We women, we need to exercise for our entire lives. It's up there as important as having a healthy diet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the other thing that it's important for women to know about cardiovascular disease is that it presents differently in women. Like I always grew up looking for like the numb arm and, the classic signs of heart attack for men are not actually the signs that present for women. Women tend to have more microcirculation issues. So the warning signs are not the same. And I think that's why it probably goes undiagnosed. And I think women in general across the board in disease, right? They have less of a chance of their issues being caught early than men.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. In addition to the arterial was something that really we look very closely at is hormones for
Yes.
women and men, but that is a huge issue with decrease of estrogen in particular. But we also look at progesterone and testosterone that's cardiovascular protective and brain protective.
Yeah.
All of those very important areas. But it's really important. I think everybody that's listening, cardiovascular health is the number one longevity lever for women. And it's so ignored until, it's
Absolutely.
often too late. So thank God for all these new discoveries right now, and especially what Calroy has been pioneering in, right?
Yeah.
In women's cardiovascular health. So can you really talk about, so we hear about how important our heart is in terms of exercise, in terms of our emotional body, but there's what, 60 miles of blood
60,000
vessels?
miles, 60,000 miles of blood vessels in our
Right,
body. It's
right.
remarkable. If you lined them up, they would stretch around the world 2.5 times. And I think because we don't feel our vascular system until something has gone very wrong, we tend to not think about it, but it is our transport system. So, as you mentioned, hormone therapy is very effective in women over the age of 40 and can be very beneficial to cardiovascular health. And how does that hormone therapy get delivered? If we think about our cardiovascular system and all 60,000 miles of blood vessels, arteries, and these microcapillaries, that system is our transport system. It's responsible for carrying oxygen and nutrients to every system and every organ in our body. And as we're learning more about even cognition and cognitive health, we're learning how critical the vascular system is to that. So 60,000 miles of these blood vessels. And as you mentioned, there's been a lot of really interesting, in my opinion, emerging science in cardiovascular care, which is, I think, a bit of a dawn of the new age. And essentially, we used to look at our blood vessels like they were a garden hose, like it's just a tube that carries blood. But since we've been able to see our microscopic images has improved over the years, we've been able to see more detail into those blood vessels. And the inside of that blood vessel is what's called the endothelium. I think most of your listeners would be aware of that. So we've known about the endothelium for many decades now, but what is new science is that covering that endothelium is this microscopic, thin, slippery, almost gel-like layer called the endothelial glycocalyx. And this glycocalyx layer is actually now kind of emerging as ground zero for all vascular health. So that gel-like layer is actually an intelligent barrier. It gets to decide, I kind of call it the bouncer of your blood vessels. It decides what gets through to the endothelial wall and what gets blocked from the endothelial wall. So it sort of acts like Teflon in a pan. If we think about what are we trying to prevent here, we're trying to prevent plaque from building up in the arteries. We want that slippery layer to just let the blood flow and the contents of the blood, move very smoothly through the vessel. So we've really learned that this glycocalyx layer is a massive therapeutic target for vascular health, which is a really, I think, maybe one of the biggest discoveries in cardiovascular health in the last couple of decades. So we know this layer is incredibly vital and critical. It's fragile, but it's also resilient. So the typical things that would break down this layer in the blood vessels would be like high blood sugar, stress, as we mentioned, right? Smoking, inflammation in the body, kind of the big three characteristics of disease in general, kind of contribute to the decrease in health of that glycocalyx layer. So that's why we're starting to see, I think, more progress, especially in our root cause medicine community, in addressing cardiovascular disease, which is really exciting. We know this glycocalyx layer is absolutely critical. What Calroy Health Sciences started to do over 20 years ago is invest about $25 million in research on this layer to really understand what it is, how does it function, what does it work, and then for us, most importantly, what really supports the health of that layer. And we actually co-patented a microfluidic chip device. And this device allows us to put living human glycocalyx cells on this device, and then we pulse blood over it to kind of mimic blood flow through the blood vessels, including that shear stress. And that allows us to test what breaks down the glycocalyx layer. And as I mentioned, high blood sugar is a massive component in the decimation of that layer. So we were able to put sugar essentially on the glycocalyx layer, degrade that layer, and then put other substances on top of it to see how we can actually grow it back. And in the process of doing that, we found that a category of marine polysaccharides were really efficient in rebuilding that glycocalyx. And we actually landed on a green seaweed called Monostromonididum, which is a very rare seaweed. This green seaweed was able to actually regrow glycocalyx cells to 103% of normal within 24 hours. So that then became the core of the formula that became Arterisol HP.
That's awesome. I have a bottle of it right here. So in addition to, what are some of the other things that really make this so effective for this?
Yeah, so we talked about stress, and oxidative stress is another factor in the degradation of the glycocalyx layer. So the magic in our Arterisol is that green seaweed, and specifically an extraction that we've patented called Monotim RS. So that is the core active ingredient. We've also added a polyphenol blend of fruits and vegetables to sort of add some oxidative stress support to the formula. But one of the clinicians, Dr. Joel Kahn, who I think you're familiar with,
Yes.
a famous cardiologist, writer, and researcher and teacher, calls it a smoothie in a bottle. So it's essentially seaweed. Again, a very rare form of seaweed that it's not the seaweed that you're going to get at the sushi restaurant, but seaweed, fruits, and vegetables are the main components of our Arterisol HP. So very safe, very well tolerated with pharmaceuticals, with other supplements. It just not only performs very well in supporting the glycocalyx, it's well tolerated by almost everyone.
And it sounds like it's easy to take, just one twice a day.
Exactly. One in the morning and one in the evening.
And this is expected to help people with high blood pressure, any type of hypertension.
We find that it just really helps again with the support of the overall blood vessel system. So we have published studies on blood pressure support. We also really wanted to look at microcirculation. Again, we talked about that being more of an issue for women in cardiovascular dysfunction. And so we wanted to look at neuropathy, which is a microcirculation or a microcapillary issue. So we published a study on neuropathy, and then we also have some published case studies as well.
Did you know that your body is naturally designed to heal itself? Did you know that with the right biohacks, you can have the advantage of turning back the clock and feel younger than you did 20 years ago? In Dr. Robin Benson's free fast class, she will teach you the top 5 leading edge treatments that will help you grow biologically younger, regain quality of life, prevent disease, and maintain a strong immune system. So go to top5regen.com for a 20-minute fast class and begin your own path to accelerating and supporting your natural birthright of regeneration. That's top5regen.com to discover the keys to live your best life in a body you've always dreamed of.
Excellent. So what about viruses and bacteria? Like COVID, right, is affecting there was a lot of issues with heart health with that virus in particular.
Yes, we are finding a lot of endothelial dysfunction that resulted in long COVID cases or as a result of COVID. Ovation Lab, which is an organization that works in the root cause medicine area, partnered with Fullscript, which is a distributor of supplements, and they developed a post-viral recovery program. And Arterisol is a main component of that program because of its capacity to really support healthy blood flow and healthy blood vessels.
So people with like carotid artery inflammation, how soon will Arterisol, it sounds like it's pretty much fast acting, but to really notice a change, like in terms of
Yeah.
blood markers? Like, how can people really tell the shift
Yeah.
that's happening?
Great question. I think it really depends on, how their clinician approaches what diagnostics they offer in their clinic and their program. So there are certainly blood markers that we would be looking for, as you mentioned, blood pressure, checking blood pressure progress. Some people might do carotid intermediate thickness. Other people will do CT scans. So in general, we start our tyrosol working, as we showed in our cellular study, almost immediately, but it really takes anywhere from, I would say, 3 to 6 months to see some substantial progress there. Now, in my case, as I mentioned, in June of 2019, I was 51 when I did my first CIMT and I had an arterial age of 69. I was already doing a lot of the right things. So I didn't make a lot of other lifestyle changes. I mentioned to you, I started to maybe meditate a little bit more, maybe try to manage the stress a little bit better. But arterisol was my main addition to my health stack. And what I found is within 6 months, my arterial age had actually decreased to 66. So it went down 3 years and 6 months, which begins to show again a decrease in that sort of inflammatory presence. And then just recently, I was at another conference in April, and this was a milestone moment for me. I'm now 57, and my arterial age is now down to 55. So I'm now in a reverse relationship with my arterial age when I was in the worst 10th percentile. So for me, part of the reason why I'm here and working with Calroy Health Sciences is that I really, as I mentioned, got so passionate about raising awareness of cardiovascular issues because we're just at this place now where we actually can make a difference if we can detect it early on. And that's really what I want to try to offer women who are listening to this podcast. Like, there are lots of ways that you can look at the health of your cardiovascular system by working with a clinician like Dr. Benson. Integrative functional medicine clinician will help you assess the health of your vascular system. And, everything that we do for our health, and I think about, like, I love skincare and beauty, and I know you do too, Dr. Benson.
I do.
The amount of money that I spend on like potions and serums for my face, your vascular system is probably the biggest sort of contributor to skin and just, hair health that you can possibly imagine because it's feeding that sort of vibrance in the skin. I actually know some estheticians that will prescribe our nitric oxide product, for instance, when they're doing skincare work with people because blood flow is so essential to having vibrant, beautiful skin.
Let's definitely talk about nitric oxide. It's so
Yeah,
essential. We mostly hear about it in men's health, right? And a healthy erectile function, how important it
yeah,
is. It's just now getting more recognition as it is vitally important to our health. It's
yes,
something our body produces, but very often we're deficient. So I love the Calroy product, the nitric oxide product. So please tell us more about
yeah.
how important that is.
Yeah, so the product that we developed is a product called Vascanox, and it's a next generation version of nitric oxide. So to back up a little bit, we should say that nitric oxide was actually the researchers who developed the paper on nitric oxide actually received a Nobel Peace Prize. So it's actually called the miracle molecule. So nitric oxide is a fairly newly discovered, like the glycocalyx, component of overall vascular health. And nitric oxide is really responsible for vasodilation. So one of the things that is really important to blood vessel health is that sort of elasticity. If you think about, again, let's use the garden hose analogy, you leave that out in the sun. As it ages, it tends to get stiffer, more cracked. The integrity of the hose gets compromised. So we can actually think about blood vessels in the same way. Like, we want to keep that elasticity. That elasticity allows for more vasodilation and optimized blood flow. So you're absolutely right. Like, men talk about it all the time. Why? because they want it for their workouts. They want to have a great CrossFit workout or whatever it is they're doing. And it's also a natural solution for erectile function, for having better erections. So these are all true for men, but there are so many incredible benefits of nitric oxide for women. And as I've mentioned, we just naturally produce less nitric oxide as we age. So whenever I've tested anyone at conferences using the nitric oxide salivary test strips, these take about 5 seconds to do, but they're a really handy way of just looking to see whether or not you need additional nitric oxide supplementation. So it'll test your levels of nitric oxide in your saliva. And what's really interesting about this is, as I mentioned, it's really easy to tell if you're low and if you would benefit from nitric oxide supplementation. And for women, we tend to have, again, these microcirculatory issues, right? Like cold fingers, cold toes. Brain fog comes up a lot for women over the age of 40 and 50 with some of the hormonal changes that we have. So nitric oxide is really critical for overall circulation, for really preventing fatigue, preventing brain fog. And women have very similar plumbing to men in terms of sexual function. And Dr. Benson, you do a lot of work with this with women. Women's sexual organs perform in much the same way that men's do. So increased circulation and vasodilation to the female sex organs are also critical for sexual performance and satisfaction.
Yeah, I test so many men and women, and most people are deficient. I mean, this is something that naturally we get from some certain foods, right? But these, I guess when you take
Right.
2 capsules of this can really help keep those levels
Yeah.
good range on a day-to-day basis.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of things that we can just naturally do that produce nitric oxide. Working out is a great example of like helping to really increase vasodilation and nitric oxide production. So working out is key. A nitrate-rich diet, which is fruits and vegetables that are high in nitrates. This could be beets, green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, all really help with the production of nitric oxide. What's long been an issue is that nitric oxide, while it is a miracle molecule, is also a really short-lived gas. So when you take a dietary nitrate product in, like a vegetable, or even a nitrite or nitrate-based supplement, a nitric oxide supplement, it works. It will increase your nitric oxide, but it usually only stays over the therapeutic level for 6, maybe 8 hours maximum. And so you have to keep eating it or taking it. For a lot of people, eating that much dietary nitrate is a challenge. So,
Because mostly we're thinking about like spinach and beets, right? Those are the
right.
2 things that come to mind.
And yeah, what we've done with Vascanox is we've kind of taken a back door to the production of nitric oxide. So the front door, what's commonly done is that we put nitrate or nitrite in the product itself. It increases your nitric oxide. And then, as I mentioned, it's short-lived. So we do have some dietary nitrates in the product to help bump up nitric oxide upon ingestion. But I think the thing that's really kind of brilliant about this formula, and the reason I call it a next generation formula, is that we also use black garlic. And black garlic is actually a precursor to the gas hydrogen sulfide.
Hmm.
And hydrogen sulfide is a companion gas to nitric oxide. And those two gases work really well to recruit both the endogenous and the exogenous pathway. So the body can store and release nitric oxide as needed over a 24-hour period. So in the published study that we did, people took 2 capsules in the morning. They tested their saliva for nitrate levels every 2 hours for a 24-hour period. And what we found is that people stayed over that threshold that therapeutic threshold for 24 hours on a single dose. So 2 of these capsules in the morning will support your body with the natural storage and production of nitric oxide over a 24-hour period. So again, think about like healthy skin, nails, warm fingers, better brain and heart health, vasodilation to all of the organs and systems in the body.
So what's recommended is for people that really need it to do the arterosil in addition to this nitric oxide product. Yeah.
Yes, I mean, I would say ideally anyone over the age of 45, and certainly anyone over the age of 45 with any family history of cardiovascular issues or any existing signs of cardiovascular issues, or you're just a biohacker on the longevity path, right? Cardiovascular health is just the number one place to start for longevity. Why? Because it's the number one obstacle to longevity for most people. So arterosil in an ideal world, I would say, is foundational for everyone over the age of 45. Then you can use the nitric oxide test strips to see if you need additional nitric oxide support. What we find is that some people might take arterosil and that helps support their body's own nitric oxide production. They may or may not need a nitric oxide supplement. I would say maybe roughly speaking, 70% of the people that I test over the age of 50 need both products for optimal vascular health.
Mhm. I'm so curious about because I'm actually tried one of these strips for the first time today, and
Uh-huh.
there's measuring also the oral biome. So can you
Right.
that is so cool, this connection of the biome, the health of not just the oral biome but our gut biome and nitric oxide production. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I'm super excited too because we'll talk a little bit about the offer that we've put together for the listeners. But what we're offering listeners who purchase Arterosil and Vascanox is a free package of the oral microbiome gum. And we developed this gum because we've long known that there is a connection between oral health and cardiovascular health. What we did with the 2-in-1 nitric oxide test strips is we're testing not only your nitric oxide level in your saliva, we're also testing the prebiotic nitrate level. So essentially the readiness of the mouth and the oral microbiome to convert nitric oxide. That is one of the pathways that our body naturally uses to produce nitric oxide. So it's really helpful for us to know, one, if what the presence of nitric oxide is in the saliva, but then also our readiness for production. So what the oral microbiome does is it's actually a plant-based gum that really supports and feeds the bacteria in our mouth that are responsible for that conversion of nitric oxide. So these are good bacteria. We want them healthy and well fed in our mouth so that our vascular health is nice and strong. So the gum is a great and fun way of supporting that.
This is awesome. I like the gum too. I think it's
Yeah.
excellent. All these ways to really help. I mean, ultimately, this our cardiovascular are is just it's so essential for all of
Yeah.
us. And
Yeah.
so I want to thank you for this offer for our audience. So the link for the special offer that Andie talked about, you can find at calroy.com/Dr. Robin. That's DRROBYN. And so this is what's really awesome too. From now through the end of the year, the younger podcast listeners will get 10% off their order of Arterosil for like glycocalic support and Vascodex HP for blood flow.
Right.
Plus,
Yeah.
you get a free bag of oral biome gum for happy smiles and healthy hearts. So this is a $142 special. That's usually $187. So awesome.
Right. Yeah. And if you throw the gum in, it would probably cost an additional $40. So you get a free gum and you get 10% off of Arterosil and Vascanox, which, I just think if I'm building any longevity protocol, those would be my 2 cornerstones.
Wow. Thank you so much, Andie, for all of you shared today. Is there anything, one or two other important threads of information you'd like to share with us, since you're in this every day, and this company is doing a ton of research that
Yeah.
you feel is vitally important for every woman to hear about health?
Yeah, I just feel like, the more I really dig into this subject of cardiovascular health, there's so much being published right now. And I think one of the exciting things that has come out in the last 3 months, and I think you and I talked about this recently, is we've known how critical that endothelial glycocalyx layer is to blood vessels. What I didn't know until recently is the thickness of that layer varies depending on where the blood vessels are located in the body. So, for instance, if we look at the capillaries in the blood-brain barrier, the glycocalyx layer actually makes up over 40% of those capillaries. So, and that is almost twice as much as the capillaries that are nearer the actual heart. So all of a sudden, we're seeing this sort of influx of papers being written about the importance of protecting the endothelial glycocalyx for cognitive health. And that's an area that we are really doing a lot of research on. We've got a project in the field with the VA that will look at cognition related to the use of our tyrosine and Baskin, and we have a couple of other pilot programs in place to really look at improvements in cognition with a healthy vascular system. So that's been an exciting new piece of news that we've been digging into. And then again, I think men's sexual health and men's sexual satisfaction gets a lot of airtime these days. As a woman over 50, I'd like to see more being done for women in that area. So one of the areas that we're going to be exploring in the next year is looking at female sexual performance and satisfaction.
Excellent. Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Appreciate all that you've shared with us today. And again, for all of you that have listened to this, men or women, please share this information. These products are transformational, life-changing. We have witnessed it with so many of our patients, and this is something that I personally take as well. And I'm just so glad to now add the gum to my repertoire. And for sure, Andie, we do check these levels with women because they've been overlooked in a big way. All right,
Yeah.
you all have a fantastic day. Thanks for being with us today.
What did you think of today's show? Let us know when you write your review and subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher today. Receive your chance to win a VIP day, $10,000 value with Dr. Robin Benson. When you review and subscribe with your name, we enter you in a drawing for a VIP day at the Brain Optimization and Body Regeneration Studio in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Get ready to experience the latest science to feel and look younger in your body naturally.